Hello, listeners, and welcome back to the Lyssn podcast. My name is Alyssa, but you can just call me Lyss. Now, as you can probably hear, I am all sorts of nasal and man tones, and that is because I am recovering from that awful flu, cold, bug thing that's been going around. So for today, just picture me as Phoebe singing in Central Perk with a cold, Thank you, my babies. But if there was ever a time that it made sense to record this episode, it's probably now, because I am absolutely exhausted and run down due to the beauty of motherhood. And motherhood is exhausting, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. Now, this is not the type of exhausting that is the cute kind, like the Pinteresty, Instagram kind, like coffee, coffee, coffee kind. And if you know where that reference is from, you're my people. Shout out to my Gilmore Girls fans. But this is the bone deep soul exhaustion that can come with motherhood. The type of exhaustion that's like the I don't even know who I am anymore, I'm a shell of a human being kind of exhaustion. So for generations, the mark of a good mother has always been her ability to sacrifice herself for her children. The barometer is exhaustion. Her level of exhaustion was what we then equated with her level of good mothering, through how much of herself she sacrificed and gave up, through her ability to push through without complaint, through her level of letting go of all of her needs and her sense of self in order to give to everyone else, and essentially becoming invisible in the process so that she could give to everybody else other than herself. But the story of giving up everything of yourself for others is no longer the measure for good motherhood. And we are so much more aware of our mental health and our physical health, and understanding that our needs are just as important as mothers, and that it does take a village. And that has been something that has been well known for many, many generations. And we just haven't really honored that season of the village, because there's been this push for the woman who can do it all, for the woman who can be as successful as possible. And in order for her to do that, as we've spoken about before, she often ends up reaching this level of burnout, which then means she can't actually show up as a good mother. And all of her needs get sacrificed to the point that she doesn't even know who she is anymore. But let's be honest, this model doesn't work. This standard leaves women feeling depleted. It leaves them feeling disconnected. It leaves them feeling completely disheveled. And it leaves them feeling like they have to dissolve themselves and who they are for this impossible standard. And then what it's modeling for our children is that you need to abandon yourself in order to be loved, or to be successful, or to be the ideal woman. So here's the reframe. I think the word sacrifice is not what we should be putting up on a pedestal here, right? We always hear like parenthood and motherhood is to sacrifice yourself. Yes, to an extent, but I think that's the wrong word, because the word sacrifice is implying this loss of something, this negative connotation, the loss of self, the loss of time, the loss of money, the loss of a career, the loss of sleep, the loss of freedom, the loss of opportunities. And so it frames parenthood as this level of subtraction or diminishment, with an undertone of this martyrdom, where the victim type person can see it as, I need to sacrifice all of myself in order for my child to thrive. Almost as though your worth as a parent is determined by your willingness to love more by sacrificing more, if that makes sense, by like how much you're willing to endure or how much you're willing to give up. And that can feel really heavy, because it's almost like this obligation versus this choice of like, I need to sacrifice myself for my children because that's the right thing to do. But sacrifice often also implies that there's this one-sidedness, that one person loses in order for the other person to gain, right? So I feel like we should reframe this word sacrifice to something more powerful, something that gives the power back to the parents, as well as being powerful for the children. And this is not to say that we don't need to give of ourselves as parents. This is saying that the cultural standard of feeling like you have to completely become invisible as a human being, as a parent, as a mother, in order for your children to be successful or to thrive in the world, I think that is really outdated and something that we no longer need to subscribe to. Here's my reframe. Sacrifice becomes devotion. See how much more powerful that is? When you are devoted to your kids, you still give of yourself. You still give everything to them that you possibly can, but not with the diminishment of yourself. You can give from a full cup as opposed to sacrifice implies an empty cup. Does that make sense? It's the prioritization and the investment and the dedication that you have to your children. That doesn't need to change, but by devoting yourself to your children instead of sacrificing yourself for your children, that is where there is a massive shift for you to be able to stand in your power and in your truth and in your fullness of who you are without needing to feel like you can't be all of who you are in order to be a parent. So this is not to say that you won't need to make changes, right? Obviously, you need to make changes as soon as a baby comes into your life. And you are no longer the first priority. Your child is the first priority. And naturally, that's the way that it has to be. They cannot fend for themselves. They cannot feed themselves. They cannot clean themselves. They cannot dress themselves. They cannot literally do anything without you. So they are dependent completely upon you. What it means is that you give of yourself to the child so that they can have everything that they need to thrive and so that you can also thrive. Now, this is also very dependent on not only your mindset, but on the community and the resources and the support and networks and your village that you have around you. So the point is that exhaustion is not the proof that you are a good parent. And that is what I really want us to reframe here, because that is a story that for far too long has been passed down from generation to generation. And I think it's time that we reclaim back this idea that we do not need to push ourselves to complete burnout and to disease and to exhaustion in order for us to prove our worth to anybody, especially externally. And not ourselves, right? We are the most important person that we need to prove anything to. We are the person that we wake up with and we go to sleep with every single day for the rest of our lives. And that is the person you should be impressing, nobody else, especially when it comes to motherhood and parenthood. I want to be completely open and honest and raw and vulnerable and real with you guys. I am 8.5 months postpartum. And I honestly feel like my body has been through a war. I wake up daily with insane joint pain, and that is breastfeeding induced joint pain. So it's currently in my finger joints, my wrists, my knees, my hips, my ankles, and my toe joints, which, as you can tell, is probably not the most ideal situation when you are attempting to feed a baby, hold a baby, carry a baby, just get around in everyday life. That's always difficult with joint pain, but let alone having a baby attached to you almost 24/7, right? So I'm doing Pilates, I'm doing home workouts, and currently what I've been told is that the only thing that is going to fix it is me stopping breastfeeding, which I'm not prepared to do with my son. I want to breastfeed him for as long as possible. So I'm doing everything that I possibly can on the more natural front to really maintain and manage that joint pain. And some days are better than others. But the reality of it is that whether it's my joint pain, I've got back pain at the moment, I've just got complete and utter exhaustion. It's the kind of exhaustion that sleep alone just can't fix. And that's okay, because it is a season of life. The really important thing is to know that when you're in this state of complete depletion, that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. And when you have systems and people around you to support you, you lean on them for what it is that you really need. So for me, that looks like supplements and ice baths and Epsom salt baths or magnesium floats or massages and my grounding sheet that I have on my bed, staying hydrated and drinking as much Kangen water as possible. And when I do all of those things, I feel fine. When I don't do all of those things, everything comes crashing back down. And it's really hard to prioritize yourself in this season because you are prioritizing your child. Now, this is where the dynamics of the masculine and feminine come in. If you are lucky enough to be in a supportive heterosexual relationship where you have that masculine feminine dynamic. Now, of course, when it comes to masculine feminine polarities and energies, this isn't gender specific, of course. I do speak from that space because that is my reality, that is my experience. But of course, if you do not fit into that label, that is totally fine. In every relationship, though, there will always or should always be a masculine feminine polarity. And you'll find that if you don't have that, that is more than likely one of the reasons why you'll find you have struggles in your relationships. That's a whole other topic for a whole other day. So, speaking from my experience and my reality, that masculine feminine polarity is really important for that dynamic to come together in its most authentic form, meaning the masculine is there to support the feminine. So the masculine in its truest, most authentic version and highest version of self is meant to support the feminine. They're meant to provide for the feminine and give the feminine the support that they need so that they can thrive, so that they can feel full, so that they can then give back to the father. But majority of the time in this season, it's giving back to the child, right? So the father supports the mother so the mother can support the child. That's not to say that the father gets completely excluded or that the father is not important and that his needs aren't important, but they may not be the priority at this point in time when you have a newborn child. And that's okay because, again, it's a season, which means that seasons change and there will be a point in time when the feminine can give back to the masculine. Now, the hardest part is that this isn't necessarily always a physical thing. We also, as the feminine archetype, hold a lot of the mental load. This is the constant noise that is in your brain, those invisible lists and tasks that just sit in your brain for things to get done. So for me, this looks like, what time did Leo go down for his nap? How much has he eaten today? When has he had all of his feeds today? How many clothes does he still have that he fits into, and what size clothes do I still need to buy? What season of clothes do we currently have, and what season are we coming into, and what season do we need to buy? When's his next nap? What are we having for dinner? Am I cooking something that he can eat, or do I need to cook a separate dinner for him so that he can also get all of his nutrients in because he's now on solids? That's just pertaining to Leo and whether he's got classes and all of those types of things and what he requires in his life. That's not including all of the things that I need to do for myself, whether that's in a professional capacity, whether that's doing the podcast or my life coaching or my personal branding stuff on Instagram, whether it's my water business or whether it is my Reiki business or my entertainment business that still runs behind the scenes with all of my girls down in Sydney. Then we've got coffee catch-ups and catch-ups with friends because I need a social life, right? Then we've got the things to do with the house, whether that's finances and bills. We're currently going through a partnership visa, so we've got all of our statutory declarations and proof of relationships and all of those kinds of things that we need to supply in order to prove our relationship. Then you've got the ironing and the cooking and the cleaning and making sure that the home life remains peaceful and calm and clean, because there is nothing worse than living in a cluttered home, right? And when you've got kids, that can be really difficult as well. So you can see how there is a huge mental load, and that's not including so many other additional things that I think about on a daily basis and that most women will think about on a daily basis. So that constant noise in our brains is just never switching off. And we are thinking about everything from doctor's appointments to play dates to swimming lessons to our own things like getting our hair done or getting our nails done if you're so lucky to have the time to do that, going to the gym, making sure that we have time to do workouts, all of that stuff, and eating, even just having the time and the energy to fuel yourself instead of everybody else, right? This is what I mean when I talk about the mental load. Now, if you are new parents, one of my biggest pieces of advice I could give you is to communicate with your partner before you even get to the point of being parents. Ideally, while you are pregnant, I would be having this conversation. What are the roles that you expect to be doing, and what are the roles that I expect to be doing once this baby is here? Because these are the conversations that a lot of people don't necessarily have, and it becomes a really massive shock when they finally get to the point of having a baby here, which is so exciting and beautiful and wonderful, and you just are in this little love bubble with your new bubba. But then you have the experience of, right, all of these things need to get done, like nappy changes and feeds, etc. And what happens if you haven't communicated these things is the masculine's either going to follow whatever their father did and whatever they can recall from their father figures, or they're going to revert to what they think they should be doing, which may not necessarily be coming from a place that is informed enough to actually know what is required. So I am very lucky in the fact that Geronimo was extremely supportive, and we had these conversations before Leo came, which meant that when I was in that postpartum season, especially that beginning of the postpartum period, he knew that I wanted sushi. As soon as the baby was out of me, I wanted sushi desperately. I was so intensely craving sushi, but obviously they do recommend that you shouldn't have sushi unless it's like super, super, super fresh when you're not the one cooking it. You can't be too careful. So I didn't have any sushi throughout my pregnancy. And if you know me, you know that I eat a lot of sushi and I love sushi. So that was the thing. I was like, as soon as this baby is out of me, give me sushi. Now, I gave birth to Leo at like 1:30 in the morning. So of course I wasn't going to eat sushi straight away. I had like a tea, we went to sleep. And then the next day, Geronimo went out and he bought sushi. He also cleaned the entire house for us. I gave birth on our rug. Like, you wouldn't have even known. It was completely spotless. Like, there was TMI, but there was no blood anywhere because there was definitely a lot of blood. And he had drained our birthing pool, and he had like done everything that I could have asked for so that I could honestly just enjoy being with the baby and focus on healing and on what I needed. He had food ready for me. I had prepared a lot of food. Food is my love language. And I mean, I come from an Italian European background, so we definitely enjoy the food. And that was something that I focused on pre-pregnancy, was making sure that we had enough food. So he didn't have to necessarily cook the food. He just had to like reheat the food, but he was constantly there. I remember him bringing in we've got this tray that you can either use in the bath, or you can like pop the legs out and you can have it on the bed, or you can take it like on picnics and stuff. It's super, super cute. But anyway, he brought that in with like my breakfast on it and gave me breakfast in bed. And like, he was there for everything that I needed. If I needed water, he had it there ready waiting for me. He knew what I needed because I had communicated it. If I hadn't have communicated it though, who knows? Maybe he would have shown up that way, and maybe he wouldn't have. We did listen to a lot of podcasts and a lot of things before giving birth as well on our individual roles of what we could expect for ourselves as parents in the postpartum period and in the first year of life. And I think that is really important, because that like fourth trimester is something that not a lot of people prepare for. And it is something that I think is really under talked about and so important, especially for people's physical health, but not just their physical health, their mental health. And this is where, if somebody is struggling with postpartum depression, for example, having a supportive partner or a supportive village around you that can pick up these roles and really show up for you, whether that's cooking you a meal or coming by to clean the house for you, whatever that looks like for you in the way that's going to make you feel most supported, communicating that with the people around you who are your support people is the most important thing that you can do. Because when you don't, oftentimes your partner may not understand that mental load. And what they might do is come to you and ask you the question like, where does this go? Or what do I do with this? Now, to them, it might seem like that is a really innocent, easy question to answer. But to you, it makes you feel like you're the project manager of the house and of the family. And like, you have to be the one with all the tabs open in your brain so that you can manage everything else that's going on. And you get to then outsource to them all the information that you have in your brain, rather than you acting as a team so that that person can show up for you. Because if you don't, that responsibility of not only doing the tasks, but assigning the tasks and managing the tasks and keeping track of all of the tasks, that's the thing that is incredibly exhausting, and the thing that most women struggle the most with when their partner isn't stepping up in the way that they assumed that they would. And that is why these conversations are so important to have pre-pregnancy if you can, and if not, the most convenient moment that you can have afterwards. And I think this is why so many women confuse exhaustion with identity because they equate love with sacrifice. And we just keep passing down this message that this is like burnout is what motherhood looks like and womanhood looks like. And that is a message that is really just promoting survival mode and disease. So let's stop calling it strength. Let's start communicating and let's really make sure that we are giving from a full cup. So what does that look like? That looks like making sure that you have time to yourself, making sure that your partner or your community can hold you in this season just as much as you're holding your child. And this is also about communicating with your partner, but understanding that men and women are wired differently. And this is a huge thing to understand. Alison Armstrong talks about how men are wired for singular focus, yet women, this is why they call women the multitaskers, right? We have this, I think she calls it diffuse awareness, which is where we have so many tasks and so many things going on in our brains, and we can see everything that is happening in our environment. This is how we are biologically wired, and this is how hormonally we are created differently so that we can both achieve two different outcomes. The man is meant to go out and be singularly focused so that he can hunt and he can find that prey and he can hunt, and nothing else is going to distract him from that goal. Whereas as women, we are meant to be able to survey everything, to take in every little detail, because, you know, when we were harvesting things, we needed to know which berries were going to kill us and which ones weren't, right? There's a lot behind the evolution of these roles and what they mean. But for today's day and age in our society, what we need to really understand is that women have multiple tabs open in their head at all times, and men generally only have one, and they are singularly focused on that one thing. And neither is right or wrong. This is just our wiring, and understanding this will change your relationships, your dynamics, and how you show up for your partner. The clash does happen when we expect our partner to preempt our needs without first communicating them. And not in a way where it's nagging, ladies. Let's stop that whole thing. Really understanding that you cannot expect somebody to understand what it is that you're thinking and be a mind reader. You need to be able to clearly communicate what it is that you need, what it is that you desire, what it is that you require, and what it is that you expect, so that your man can show up for you in the way you want him to. Right? This is not a game to be played like, oh, I'm going to do this and hope that he notices, or I'm going to say this and hope that he makes a note of that present that I wanted when we went shopping that one time, right? If you want something, clearly communicate it. Then you are guaranteed that he is going to understand she wants that thing, she needs me to do that thing, and he is going to do it. Because ladies, I know that so many of you think like, if he loved me, he would know that I want that, or he would know that I need that without me asking him for it. Whereas he's thinking, I can't win. I didn't even know that she wanted that. Communication dissolves the resentment, not the nagging, not the micromanaging, not the passive aggressive comments. Clear, open, and honest communication. So in our home, Geronimo and I have this little communication language that we have where I will say to him, if he gets home and I've had a really rough day, I'll say to him, babe, I am at 10% today. And what that means is that he then knows where I'm at capacity-wise. He can then show up in a way where he can pick up the slack. Now, this is not to always say that when one partner is at 10%, the other person has to give 90%. Absolutely not. Because he may come home and he's only at 40%. So he can give what it is that he can give. And that doesn't mean that I stop giving, but it does mean that he has a better awareness of where I'm at. And he will do the same with me. He will come home and say, hey, babe, I really don't have capacity today. I'm at like 20%. And I go, okay, cool. No worries. How can I better support you? What do you need right now? Do you maybe need to go and have a nap so that you can wake up feeling a little bit more refreshed and you can take Leo so that I can then continue doing the tasks that I need to do? Or vice versa. If I say I'm at 10%, he goes, okay, do you need me to draw you a bath? Can I take something off your hands? Do you want me to take Leo off you for a while so that you can go and have a nap, so that you can have a shower, so that you can go for a walk? And we will utilize the things that we do daily to give each other a little respite as well. Sometimes that looks like taking Max out for a walk. She goes for a walk morning and evenings, but sometimes if I'm at low capacity, what that means is I need some fresh air because I need a little bit of me time and a little bit of a break to just get away from the house for a little bit. But other times it means I am absolutely exhausted and I do not have the energy to take Max out for a walk. Can you also do that for me instead? And there's no set tasks when it comes to her walk. It's about who needs it at the time. And sometimes we'll go out as a family and it will be all four of us out for a walk. And that's beautiful too. It's about honoring each other's capacities and communicating clearly where you're at so that the other person can step up and show up for you and with you. Or sometimes you're both at completely no capacity. And that's okay too. Sometimes you can just have a day where you just veg out on the couch, where you go to the beach and lie on the beach for the entire day and don't do anything. That's also totally fine. But that is the difference between assuming or expecting somebody to assume what it is that you need and clear communication. Because expecting what hasn't been spoken to be acknowledged and understood and actioned is completely unfair, and it's manipulative and it's controlling. And what it's doing is setting somebody else up for failure. So perspective here is absolutely key. This season is intense and it's intense for everyone, but it is not forever. And leaning on those closest to you is so important. So let's look at the roles of parents and the masculine and feminine dynamic here. The healthy, high vibe masculine. His role is to take care of the mother and to show the child that risks can be taken in life and that the father will always be there to support the child in taking those risks, learning those edges and boundaries, but being there to comfort and to be that safe space that the child can always come back to. The masculine teaches the play and the fun element, but his primary role is to care for the mother so she can care for her child. Now, of course, that doesn't mean that he doesn't care for the child too. Men, this is not your scot-free. I get to just play with my kid and I don't have to do the diapers and I don't have to worry about the feeding and the sleep routine and the bathing and all of that kind of stuff. That is not what I'm talking about here, and we're not using that as an excuse not to show up. He is there to protect her energy and to lighten her load so that she can pour back into her baby and into him. And this is the thing that a lot of men don't understand. When you pour into your woman, she can pour back into you. But when you neglect her, she feels like she's running on empty and she's running on fumes and she doesn't have that chance to catch up, and she feels like she has to be everything for everyone. She's going to feel like she doesn't have anyone showing up for her, and that is where this discord and this fracture can happen in a lot of relationships, where the woman is requiring the man to step up and he is not stepping up in the way that she needs. She needs him to not only be there for her physically, it's not just about the finances and supporting the family financially. It's about your presence and your emotional intelligence to pour back into her so that she can pour back into your child. And this is going to create a really beautiful and healthy dynamic for your family. Now, dads, you have a crucial and incredibly important responsibility. You are the role model or barometer or compass for your children to see modeled the way that you treat their mother. What I mean by this is how you treat their mother is how your daughter will expect to be treated in the future by her partners, or how your son will expect that he can treat a woman in his future relationships. So what that means is you need to be very careful and very intentional with how supportive, how loving, how caring, how compassionate, how joyful you are when you show up for their mother, because you are modeling their future for them. Ask yourself, what do you want for your children for their future relationships? What do you expect for the way that they will be treated by their spouses? And are you modeling that for them right now in this moment in the way that you treat their mother? Now, women, this is absolutely in the reverse as well. You are not off the hook. The way that you show up, ladies, the way you show up to treat your man is the way that your sons will expect to be treated by their wives, by their future partners, and the way that your daughters will expect that they need to show up for their future husbands. Are you showing up in a way that is congruent with what you would want for them? Are you showing up in a way that shows them that they are worthy of being treated correctly, with respect, with honor, with love, with integrity, with communication? Because what you model for them now is what they will expect in the future. Food for thought. I want you guys to really reflect on this because this is a really big one. If you are not showing up in the way that you desire for your children, it's time for you to start making some changes. Now, men, if you are neglecting your partners when she feels neglected and she is already pouring everything she has into her child, you're going to also feel neglected. She has nothing left to give to you. Don't resent her for that. Ask yourself, have I been showing up in a way that supports her? Have I been supporting her emotional needs? Have I been supporting her physical needs? And if the answer is no, make some changes. Fix it. If the answer is yes, keep doing it. Congratulations. I would give you a medal if I could. My dad actually once told me a story about when I was born, and he went to his mentor and basically said, look, my wife doesn't really have time for me anymore. She doesn't have space for me anymore, and I feel like I'm not important to her anymore. She doesn't prioritize me. And obviously, this is a different time. These words might not be appropriate right now, and they may not be something that you could necessarily say today. But his response was, harden up and have a glass of concrete, Rob. Blunt, I know. But he said, your wife is looking after your baby. That is your number one priority. You do not get to be a priority right now, nor should you expect to be a priority right now. She doesn't have time for you, and nor should she. All of her time and energy should be going into loving and caring for that child that you both created and you both wanted. And that baby is the number one priority for you too. Now, we might actually phrase that a little bit differently today, but the truth still stands. When the father puts the mother and his wife and his children and his family first, everybody thrives. Because the counterintuitive truth here is that often when you're not receiving what you want, you withdraw, right? But the thing is, when you pour back into somebody else, they are resourced enough to pour back into you. But most people, when they are in these kinds of relationships, whether it's just in the relationship prior to having a baby around, or whether it is once you're a family, understanding that it might seem nuanced, but it's really very simple. Love flows and connection grows when you pour into somebody else because they're able to then pour back into you. When you neglect them and when you cut off your resources to that person, expecting them to then be able to realize that you're actually doing that out of spite and out of needing more, that is not emotional maturity, and that is not going to give you the results that you want. If anything, it's going to give you the opposite effect. So we're showing up with clear boundaries, healthy communication, and an understanding of what each other's roles are, with the intention of pouring into the family so that the family can overflow, because you cannot give from an empty cup. Ayanna Van Zandt actually says this perfectly, and she says, what comes out of the cup is for y'all, and what's in the cup is for me, right? You cannot give from an empty cup. You need to fill up your cup so that the overflow can provide for those around you. But what comes out of the cup is for everybody else. What's in the cup is for you. You're not letting everybody drink from your cup to the point that you have nothing left. Now, I do want to dive a little bit deeper into those men who aren't currently showing up and what it might mean for you if you are in this dynamic, whether you are the male or the masculine in this situation, or whether it is the fact that you are currently not being supported in the way that you like by the masculine in your life. And I do think that this is something that we can't avoid talking about, which is the way that men are showing up in this generation of parents, and whether or not you are being supported in the way that you should be, and what it means for those men and why it is that they aren't actually showing up in the way that you would like them to. So something that a lot of people are afraid to name is that a lot of women are currently partnered with men who don't want to grow up. A lot of men are choosing to stay single. They're choosing to stay in this mental state of boyhood or adolescence, I guess you could call it, where they don't have to grow up. They get to live for themselves. They don't really have much accountability or responsibility, but they are fully resourced through working and potentially living on their own. Maybe they've got a pet or something like that, but they don't have any additional responsibilities unless they choose to have them. They can stay home and play video games and eat takeaway as much as they like and completely avoid responsibility. And others will step into fatherhood, but they won't necessarily step into manhood. And I think this is a huge distinction because back in the day, we used to have these initiations and we used to have these strong masculine role models who would show you what it was to be a man, what it was to be a father, what it was to be a grandfather even. And in today's society, unfortunately, there aren't as strong role models that are present in our communities and in our family lives either. So what this is causing is men who are physically present but emotionally absent. So they're expecting to be prioritized and they still act like boys, but they are leaning on the fully resourced woman at their disposal to provide what they require on a physical and emotional basis. Now, I'm not saying that this is the men's fault. I think we need to look into how they were raised. This culture of you're amazing and you can do anything that you want and you can have everything that you want. The generations of men who have been fortunate enough to be given everything that they need and everything that they want without necessarily the initiations and the rites of passage, without even needing to earn the things that they were wanting. But there isn't this transition to mark boy to man anymore, the way that we used to have that in our ancient civilizations and cultures. Society allows for us to walk through life in a very weak way if we really choose to. It even supports that. But without those anchors, we're allowing men to live these lives where they can prioritize their own needs because they're fully resourced. They have a complete sense of freedom and they have this single lifestyle. And then when they do get initiated into fatherhood, rather than that feeling like a sacred initiation, it feels like a diminishing to them. It feels like an interruption to them being able to prioritize themselves. So what we essentially have, for want of a better way to phrase it, is a generation of really selfish men who expect to be prioritized because they've been able to do that for themselves and probably because their mothers did that for them, which leaves the women with the result of having to hold the family together while men kind of like teeter on the edges, confused and resentful and frustrated because they don't have this strong anchor point keeping them grounded not only to the family but to themselves and their truest divine masculine essence. And with that initiation period, if they really lean into it, it's the same with the woman. She goes from the maiden to the mother. If you really lean into these initiation periods, you can experience the most incredible growth on a personal level, but also within your relationships. But when you push back on that, what you're essentially doing is saying, I'm scared. I'm not ready. I don't want to go there yet. And for some people, that may be the truth. But for majority, it's not. It's just their ego not wanting to dissolve the part of them that wants to be the priority and that wants to be the first person that everybody thinks of in the morning. And it is not because these men are incapable. Let me make this really clear. It is because they have not been shown how to step into this role. It is because they haven't been shown what it is and what it requires and what it takes to become a father. And we have all of these outs for men where it's become socially acceptable to cheat because we portray it so much in movies and television series that it's almost like, oh, well, it's normal. It's definitely not normal, but, that is the kind of out that we've given these men. Divorce is another one. I actually have quite a few friends of mine who have gone and had babies and within the first couple of months have said, you know what, we're going to call it quits. This just isn't for us. Now, They often say within the first 3 years, you should not make any major life decisions or life choices. And that is because you have so many massive changes happening at that point in time. One of the best pieces of advice that my parents were given, which they passed down to me, was that you should always run towards your partner. You should always come together. Don't turn away from them. The minute that you turn away from them and you start talking to all of your friends and dissecting your relationship or your family, instead of turning towards each other to deal with whatever the issue is at hand and whatever it is that you need from the other person that you're not getting, it means that you're dissolving that communication and that trust and that foundation that you've both built together, and it crumbles. And then people are left feeling like the only other option they have is to turn away to somebody else, whether that is through an affair or through divorce. And men's inability to currently step into this role. Now, of course, I'm not saying every single man is in this position, but a lot of them are. And if you're feeling triggered by this, I want you to really take a moment to reflect on yourself, reflect on what it is that you're experiencing through this conversation, listening to me, and really think about what that might mean in the way that you're showing up or not showing up for yourself, but more so for your family. Right? Because you need to show up in a way that is aligned and authentic and integrated in your masculinity and what it is that your family requires of you. This is about really stepping into and initiating that part of you that is the provider, that is the protector, that is the person that they can lean on as their rock. That doesn't mean that you don't still have needs of your own and that they can't be met by the other persons or people in your family. But what it does mean is that you need to ensure that you put them first. And I guarantee you, by doing that, they will put you first. And this is why so many women are feeling neglected and unseen and unsupported in these first stages of motherhood, because they are not only carrying the physical weight of the baby and the weight of the mental load and the household load, but they are also carrying the weight of their partner who hasn't truly stepped into that initiation of manhood and fatherhood. But here's the thing, it does not have to stay that way. Men can choose to rise. They can choose to have emotional maturity. They can choose to change their priority, but it takes awareness and accountability and a willingness to put their family first above their own comfort. And when they do, everything changes. I'm going to say it one more time for all of you men out there. A mother who is deeply resourced, supported, and poured back into becomes a woman who can love deeply, who can lead deeply, and who can connect deeply. And that love cycles back into the family, and it creates strength, and it dissolves resentment. So here's the pivot point. Here is your choice. You can keep expecting your partner and the rest of the world to read your mind and understand what it is that you require and what it is that you need without you actually communicating it with everybody, staying resentful and feeling as though you're carrying everything and being completely burnt out and exhausted and blaming everybody else. Or you can open up to having those uncomfortable conversations. You can communicate clearly and healthily, emotionally, maturely with those people who are around you, whether that is your masculine counterpart or whether that is the feminine in your life, so that you can have the support that you require, so that you can pour into each other, which then creates that overflow for the rest of your family and for each other, so that you can both feel like you are still prioritized within your relationship rather than being completely neglected as a person in this new dynamic where the baby runs the show. And you can create rituals and routines of awareness and communication where you can actually say to your partner, hey, I am at 10% capacity, so that you can both show up for each other as a team and you can work through this new period together, enjoying this new stage where you both get to show up as the old and new versions of yourselves and celebrate each other in those new roles. One path leads to exhaustion. The other path leads to feeling resourced, feeling full, feeling loved, feeling joy, and feeling seen and heard and understood. And like you don't have to do it all alone. Have you had enough yet of the exhaustion? I'd say this looks so much better. But hey, That's just me. And I'm celebrating you in this moment, witnessing you in everything that you have to do, and really hoping that you lean on your community. I want you to ask yourself, what can you simplify or delegate in your life right now to other people in your community to make things easier for you to show up, not only for yourself, but for your kids? If this episode stirred something in you, if you are sick and tired of being sick and tired, this is the exact work that I do with women and men, mostly women. Stepping out of burnout, stepping into your power, and living a freedom-based life aligned with your authentic truth that feels sustainable. So whether that's working with me one-on-one, joining one of my programs, or exploring what it looks like to build an online business like I have, there is a path for you here, and I would love to walk it with you. Come find me over on Instagram at Lyssn Podcast. That's LYSSN Podcast, or you can DM me directly at Lyss Natalie. Let's get you out of this place of depletion and burnout and exhaustion and into your most vibrant, joyful, aligned, successful, abundant timeline. And of course, last but not least, my whispers from within. Where in your life are you expecting others to know what it is that you need without having spoken it aloud first? And how different would it feel and what would it look like if you gave yourself permission to communicate your needs clearly and to ask for support so that you don't have to carry it all alone? Thank you for being here today with me, my beautiful listeners. It honestly is the joy of my week. And I'm so excited to hear what it is that you've taken from this episode. Please come over and find me on Instagram and let me know what resonated here with you. And if you have any ideas of other podcast topics that you would like to know, I did do a story set last week where I asked you guys what it is you wanted to hear. This was one of the topics, but there are so many other juicy ones that I really want to share with you. And I want to make sure that you are getting the content that you are really craving. So please reach out and let me know what it is that you want to hear. But for now, keep listening, always to yourself and your inner wisdom first. I'll see you next week.